What's up, guys, and welcome to the Arcane Mage Guide for patch 5.3 going into patch 5.4, and hopefully there won't be too many changes that I've checked out on the PTR so far, so it's looking like it's pretty much going to be the same. The greatest thing about Arcane is it really scales with the amount of int that you get. So typically, kind of how it would work is switching to Arcane, you really want to have a little bit higher int level just to compensate. After they've nerfed Scorch Weaving from patch 5.2, now we're pretty much maintaining our mana. They also lowered our stacks down to 4. So the first thing I want to do is I want to cover everything with you, and we're going to go right through it. So we're going to go through the talents and the glyphs and everything, okay? Talent-wise, for your Arcane Mage, pretty much Blazing Speed is the way to go, especially if you are a Rune of Power Arcane Mage. I believe purely in Rune of Power. I've found very, very few situations where Invocation is worthwhile to play as Arcane, but that's just me. I prefer the Rune of Power, and Blazing Speed really, really helps with that. The reason that it helps so much is because, as you can see here, when I press it, it's like an instant rocket boots, and you can pretty much get to wherever you're going. Okay, you combine this with the Glyph of Blink, which we'll get into later, and you can cover a lot of distance in a very short amount of time and get back into DPSing. The biggest thing with the Arcane, guys, is it's still a mana management and a movement management spec. If you can figure out how to move less and get to your spots the quickest, you're going to do more DPS, as well as manage your mana. That is the two keys to this spec. Okay, as far as the level 30 talents go, again, Temporal Shield is off the global, so you can always use that if you are trying to spec a little bit more aggressively. Ice Barrier, again, if you need that kind of big shield, especially in any raid encounters where you're taking a lot of damage, like for instance, you know, there's always like Darumu, you can be a little bit safer by taking that. You know, maybe Animus, when you're taking your ad, you can be a little bit safer using that, especially if your healers are trying to work on other things. Switching from Ice Barrier to Temporal Shield is pretty much something that you do as you get more comfortable with a fight and you're speccing a little bit more aggressively to try to push out that extra GCD that you would lose by using Ice Barrier. The level 45 talents no one cares about in PvE, so let's be honest, you deal with them how you want. Level 60 talents, again, same idea. Depending on the fight, Cold Snap is very useful in some fights, such as the Twisting Fates in the Council of Elders encounter, or on Jinrock even. You can use it for oh, hang on. You can use it for Jinrock for the ionization buff. You can use it for any of these things, and that's pretty much the easiest way to do it. Cauterize, again, we all know how this works. It pretty much is a death saver, especially if you have your ice block off cooldown. You realize Cauterize procs. It's a nice way to kind of give you a second to save yourself. Greater Invis, I love this talent for Heroic Lei Shen. I use this talent and I love it. It allows you to double soak pools if they stack. It allows you to have that extra cooldown if you get static shock and you're in an immunity group. There's just a lot of areas where Greater Invis can really come in handy if you know how to use it properly. As far as your bombs go, Living Bomb is going to be our single target bomb. Pretty much 2 to 4 targets we're going to be Nether Tempesting, and if there's a group of targets, we're going to be Frost Bombing. But they have to be a group of targets, and it has to be a sustained group of targets, okay? Otherwise, Nether Tempest is still going to pull ahead. The level 90 talents, again, if you're an Arcane Mage, you are not taking Incanter's Ward. It's very, very rare that you would see an Arcane Mage take an Incanter's Ward. I haven't found a fight where I like it. Typically, I stick with Rune of Power. There are some people who will use the Invocation talent for certain fights, but however, I typically try to stick with Rune of Power because I think it's the most beneficial, especially just the way that Arcane works, where you can't really cast on the move. So if you can't cast on the move, why would you need a talent that lets you use your abilities that you can't move anyway, right? That's kind of my theory behind it. Getting into glyphs, Glyph of Blink, I really like this one. Again, you can switch this out with Glyph of Evocation so that your Rune of Power is healing you constantly. Arcane Explosion, Mana Gem, if you're lazy like me and you don't want to cast Mana Gem or you forget every encounter, you can always use that. But again, the other useful ones are going to be Glyph of Evocation is the other main one. And again, that's just to help your healers, and this will change on a fight-by-fight basis. There are some times where maybe you want Remove Curse, you know, there's a lot of other options that you can use as well, and all of them are beneficial. Some people have asked me about the Glyph of Arcane Power. I don't find it useful. You just don't have the mana. I've seen Arcane Power used with an Invocation spec, so maybe that's how that works, but that's, again, not my play style on how to do that. Minor glyphs don't really matter. The only really one that I always recommend is Momentum, especially if you're used to it by now from the other mage specs. It comes in very handy to get out of things without having to turn your camera or do anything that. If you're walking backwards, you just blink backwards. And it's, you know what I mean? So it's pretty easy that way. But those are glyphs and talents, guys. Let's get into actual gameplay here. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to do an opener. So obviously, the biggest thing, well, I should cover stats, I guess, first. The stats we're going for are int, and then mastery, and then haste. And then crit somewhere way down the line. There's a lot of people that say haste to a certain amount, then mastery, then more haste. If you're in pretty much anything LFR and above of Throne of Thunder, you'll have more than 3,000 haste. So just stack mastery as much as you can, and then your haste will take care of itself, as haste is your secondary stat and your mana regen stat. So having haste is a good thing. So you want as much mastery haste gear, hit mastery gear as you can get your hands on. That's what you want. As you can see, guys, I just switched over from fire, so I still have quite a bit of crit on my gear, but that's okay. It's the int that I'm really worried about, and the other pieces will come with time. So what I'm doing here, guys, is for the opener, what we really want to be doing is we want to make sure we have our Rune of Power down, okay? And if, let's say, we have a pull, well, I don't even know if this will work, but let's find out. Nope. Okay, so what we're going to do is let's just count it down, okay? So pulling in 5, 4, and at 4, we're pretty much going to pot. We're going to mirror image 2, 1. At about 1, I'm arcane blasting. Then I'm putting my dot on, whatever that may be, and then I'm just arcane spam. I'm looking for both of those missile procs. I've got all those. There's my trinkets. So now I'm popping my arcane macro, and I'm pumping out all my missile procs, arcane blasting, and then before my alter time comes back off cooldown, what I want to do is I want to arcane barrage to just hit like an absolute truck, and then I'm going to go into you know, that kind of idea is I want, and then it'll reset and I'll have all my missile procs back again, and I'll have all my mana. You don't want to refresh your dot during this phase, and the reason that you don't want to do that is because you're really trying to pump out as much as you can before that alter time comes back and you have to arcane barrage. It is a DPS loss to not do the arcane barrage. And the reason I say it is because it hits like an absolute truck, and once my cooldowns come back off, later in the guide I'll go through it without explaining it. But pretty much what you're going to do is you're going to do your pre-pot, you're going to do your mirror images. I actually like to cast an arcane blast with about 1.5 to 2 seconds left on my pull timer, and then I cast my dot, and then I go back to my arcane blast till I get to my 4 stacks with my missiles and my trinkets procced, and I'm ready to pop my my DPS cooldown. Again, if you guys want to see the macro, the one that I use is pretty simple, okay? The one that I'm using is death. So here it is right here. It's just / cast arcane power / cast alter time / cast arcane missiles. Now the only thing you would add to this is if you're an engineer, you would add synapse springs to this. Other than that, though, that's what you would do. So that's what you're looking at there, and then of course any on-use effects that, or any on-use trinkets that you would have if you're using an on-use trinket, that would be where that goes as well, and that's the reason that you're putting that there, so that way it all comes up, because all those other things are off the global cooldown, so it immediately casts all those things and then throws out your missiles all in one GCD, saving you a lot of clicks, okay? That's the easiest way to think about it. That's really the only macro, though, that I use consistently for Arcane as far as the DPS burst. That's kind of my cooldown macro, so once I get all my trinkets procced and I'm ready, and I want to pump in some DPS, all I have to do is hit my macro, and I'm off and running, okay? The next thing that we do need to cover, though, is, again, the biggest thing is the mana management and movement management. So as you'll see here, all this stuff on my screen, well, what is it all? I have my dot. If there's not a dot on my target, this thing's next to me, and I don't like it here, so I want to get rid of it. So what do? Bam. It is now gone. I don't have to worry about that. See, it's gone. This over here is telling me that I'm standing in my Rune of Power. If I'm not standing in it, I don't have that, so I always want that up. If that's not up, I'm sad. That's the biggest thing. Some people will do it the other way. Some people will do it so that if they're not in it, then they have that thing up. I do it this way. My totem bars keep track of both of my runes, so no matter where they are, if I move them over here, it tells me how much time I have on them. Okay, that's the reason that I have those there. This is called Player Mana Percent. This is an add-on that a lot of arcane mages use, and again, this is to track my mana. As you'll see, my cast bar is right underneath here, so I'm constantly just kind of keeping my eyes in this area of my screen. As with this spec, our biggest thing is, again, movement management and mana management. So not only do we need to know the abilities of the boss fight a little bit better, but we need to know, okay, where do I have to be now? Where can I put my next rune? When is a good time to put my next rune? Stuff like that. Once you get through your opener, guys, though, it's pretty much stack 4 stacks, use any missiles, arcane barrage off your 4 stacks, because you're trying to keep your mana as high as possible. Again, with the way that our mastery works, and I will show you guys just the tooltip, is the mana adept. It increases all spell damage based on the amount of mana that the mage has unspent. So our goal is to keep as much mana as we can while casting as hard and as heavy as we can, and that's where the synergy of the spec really comes into play, and that's where you're going to find the high DPS, is just really pumping damage into all those things. So what I will do now for you guys is I will just go through and do an opener again for you. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to go through the exact opener and let you guys see the kind of damage output that you can do. But keep in mind that the goal is again, we're getting our pot out, our mirror images out, we're doing our arcane blast, and then we're putting our dot out, and then we're arcane blasting back up to our 4 stacks, make sure we have our missile procs going, and then the next thing that we're doing is we're popping our cooldown macro, okay, and then we're going to DPS before our alter time comes off cooldown. We're going to make sure that we arcane barrage so that we get that huge damage spike, especially if there's cleave targets, guys. You're going to notice a monster amount of damage, okay? And then as soon as our alter time comes back off, we've got our missiles again, we've got our mana again, and we're just burning. Then we have our mana gem, we're popping that, and then we're burning some more, and then we go into the maintenance phase. So I'm going to kind of go into the burn phase and then go straight into the maintenance phase so you guys can see exactly how I'm doing it and the reasons behind what I'm doing, okay? So here we go. So I'm going to drop this, and let's hero just to be fun, so let's get all that out. Arcane Blast, boom, here's our 1, there's our dot, there's both our missile procs, okay, and we're popping our cooldown, and we're trying to get a couple more blasts off, we're doing our thing, and then we arcane barrage, we come right back in, we get our dot up, we get all our missiles out, we're burning, we're popping our mana gem, we're still got mana. Now we use the rest of our missile procs. Can we get away with one more? Probably. Refresh our dot, use any more missile procs, then we're into our maintenance phase. Okay, then we drop our stacks, we're into maintenance phase. What do we do for maintenance phase? Maintenance phase is pretty simple. It's just get your 4 stacks, use any missile procs that you have, and then blast them off. So what you're going to do, the only time that you would use a missile proc before 4 stacks during this maintenance phase that I'm doing right now is very simple, is if you have 2 of them, and our Rune of Power is running out, so we cast that again. If you have 2 of them, like right now, you don't want 2 because then you're wasting possible missile procs. So if you have 2 up, you always use 1. And then again, once you get to 4, boom, we're back down. And this is all you're doing at this point, guys. This is the maintenance phase. Very easy to play arcane when you're standing still in front of a training dummy. Where it gets tricky is when you have to move. So if there's an ability coming, 3, 2, 1, boom, popping my thing, I'm over my other rune and I'm done moving. Do I need to move back? Do I need to blink away? Boom, I'm blinking away and I'm putting my thing down. Okay, like I need to know. That's where the spec gets fun, guys. This is where you're going to lose DPS, is as soon as you move, is how good are you at movement. That's what we care about, is how good are we at movement. Okay? So as soon as you kind of figure out the fight, and the more times you do the fight and pull the fight, you're going to find yourself doing more and more DPS as you get more used to the movement, because your rotation's not going to change. Okay, your rotation's going to pretty much stay the same, and that's what we're really looking for. But I hope you guys like this guide. I hope you guys found it useful. If you do have any other questions about the Arcane Mage, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. Leave them on the lwlol.com forums. And just write a question for me there. You can even message me in game if you have any specific questions that you want to ask me. My battle tag is Nash #1240. Go ahead and add that. But I hope you guys like this one, and as always, we'll see you in the next.